resume recording now on Zoom. So, all right, everyone, I think we're just going to get started. I'm just going to start. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Donna Heitmanek, the administrator of the Facebook page, Science of Reading, What I Should Have Learned in College. And I also hosted a Equipped for Reading Success book study this summer, as some of you were involved in, and it was a huge success. And so one of the things that people wanted to do was to reconvene every so often to double check and see what was going on, because this is such complicated work and we're doing such great work, but a lot of us don't know what we're doing, sort of, and I'll be the first to admit it. So why not keep practicing and getting better at our skills? So about a month ago, I put out a plea to the members if there was anyone out there who wanted to do a workshop, and dear Jennifer answered my plea. So we're here tonight because she has, she's an expert in this, some really good expertise, and I'm going to read her bio to you. Jennifer Sira has been working with students as an educator since 1998. She received her BA in English Literature from Boston University and her MA in Elementary Education from Lesley University. She is also a certified reading specialist and Norton Gillingham practitioner who received training through Fairleigh, Dickinson University, an accredited IMSLEC program. After working in the public school sector for over 20 years, Jennifer decided to dedicate her passion for literacy instruction to private students struggling to read and founded READ Intervention. When she is not helping students achieve their reading goals, she is spending time with her amazingly supportive husband, who's very good at technology, I might add.
Yeah.
And 3 beautiful children and 2 fur babies. Okay. Jennifer, thank you so much for doing this for us. It's going to be fabulous because I saw the video. And I'm just so glad you're here. And for all those that are joining us, you're going to learn so much. We are also going to put her PDF of the presentation on tonight after the big event. So, and to no further ado, it's Jennifer. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm so happy to be here. And I want to thank Donna, first of all, for having me. And second of all, for the Science of Reading Facebook group, which I think has helped so many people and really shone a light on the current state of literacy and just this need to understand the science and really change how we teach reading. So thank you to you as well.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I'm going to be playing a video. It's actually an excerpt from my online training tutorials. So rather than have me going through the PowerPoints, it's already actually done. So we're going to be playing that. So first I'll really explain how to administer the past. And then I'll show you a little video that also is of me administering it with a student so you can see how it looks. All right. So without further ado, make that bigger, and here we go. Administering and Scoring the Past, presented by Jennifer Sira, Certified Reading Specialist and Norton Gillingham Practitioner. This is the Phonological Awareness Screening Test, otherwise known as the PAST, and it was created by David Kilpatrick. If you would like to download a free copy of the PAST, you can go ahead to this website, www.thepasttest.com. So now in this slide, we're going to talk about how the PAST is set up, and we're going to begin discussing how we would administer it. So it's set up into 4 levels of phonological awareness in order of difficulty. We have the syllable, the onset rhyme, the basic phoneme, and then the advanced phoneme. And just a quick note that the PAST does not assess word awareness, rhyme awareness, or identifying initial, medial, or final sounds in words. If that's something you're looking for, if maybe you're a pre-K kindergarten teacher, an assessment such as the Hegarty assessment is one you might want to consider. So a student has 3 possible potential scores for each task. So the first is a little bit counterintuitive because we usually think about X meaning wrong, but in this case, X is the best score a student can receive. X would indicate correct and automatic, meaning answered within 2 seconds or less. And when you first administer this assessment, you might want to tap your foot under the table to get a sense of what that 2 seconds or less feels like. It would be a 1 if a student answered correctly, but not automatically, meaning more than a 2-second response. And then you would indicate a 0 if the student had an incorrect response. When administering the items, just remember we're using the letter sounds and not the letter names. Now the only exception here would be when we get to section J, we do have to have the long vowel sounds, and so you would actually say the letter name because it's the long vowel sound. And again, that's just section J. We also want to be sure to pronounce sounds correctly and really clip our sounds and really enunciate. Sometimes we'll stick that schwa sound at the end. So for instance, if we're pronouncing it might be pronounced as a huh. Sometimes people add that at the end, almost like a short U. So we just want to make sure we're really clipping our sounds, we're really enunciating, and we're pronouncing letters like H like a h. So that's just something to be aware of. One unique aspect of the past assessment is that feedback should be given to the student for each incorrect item. But it's important that you don't instruct the student or teach them in any way. You're simply going to provide them with the corrective feedback. Items may be repeated, but then they cannot be scored as automatic. For levels D1 through E3, if the first item is automatic, then you can actually skip to the next level. So for instance, if D1 is automatic, then you can skip to D2. But for our kindergartners and our at-risk first graders, we want to give them all of the items on levels D and E. If the first 3 items on levels F and G are automatic, then you can skip the final 2 and score them as automatic. For our older students in grades 3 and above, then you only need to actually administer the first 2. If they're correct and automatic, then you can actually skip the rest. For levels H through M, you're going to give all of the items regardless of age. And you're going to discontinue testing if the combined correct score on 2 consecutive levels is a 0, a 1, or a 2 out of 10. So for instance, let's say a student scored a 1 on level H and scored a 0 on level I. Well, that 1 plus that 0 would give you a score of 1, and then you would just discontinue the testing and not administer any of the upper levels. A level is considered passed if at least 4 out of 5 items are correct, and a level is considered automatic if at least 4 out of 5 items are automatic. And that would be 2 out of 3 on the syllable level. So this is the top of the initial page. We're just going to fill out the information about the student. And then this breaks down the results, the basic, the onset rhyme, the basic phoneme, and the advanced phoneme level. And then it gives you a place to record how many did they get correct, how many did they get automatic. So at a glance, you can sort of see how they did. And then over here, you can fill out what was the highest level that they were correct, meaning they knew how to do it, but it might not have been automatic. And then any level that was below the highest level that they did not pass. That does happen sometimes. Like a student might do better at a higher level and have an issue at a lower level, and then you know you need to go back and do some work at that level. And then you would record here the highest automatic level. On to the actual assessment. So here's the syllable level. Now he provides some notes here about what is typically, this is the typically developing student. So these preschool to mid-kindergarten is where you expect to be able to see students be successful with this. And then when you get to E3 down here, that would be mid-kindergarten to early first. So I just did an example of what this might look like. So he makes it very explicit. It makes bold in quotation marks exactly what you need to say. And I recommend just literally reading it exactly as he asks you to do it. And then he tells you what to say if the child gets it wrong. So for instance, say birthday. Now say birthday, but don't say birth. The student gets it correct, it's automatic. You mark it with an X. If the student did not get it correct, then he tells you to give the feedback. If you say birthday without birth, you get day, okay? let's try another one. And then you would move on to airport and cowboy and make sure you do them all. Now, if this student was correct in automatic, then he can just skip to the next one. And then you're doing the same thing, but instead of doing compound words, now we're just breaking it down into 2 different syllables. Okay, and then you're going to record over here how many were correct, how many were automatic. Now you'll notice, because the student got both correct, that first one, you just assume that the rest are going to be correct for these early levels. It just saves some time. Now, the first time you do it, if you don't want to do it this way and you would like to administer the whole assessment to a student, you certainly could do that. It's not really going to affect the outcome most likely. It just is a time saver for you to skip some of these earlier ones, if they're able to do it quickly and automatically with the very first example. Then we move on to more complex syllable level activities. Again, he tells you exactly what to say. Say November, now say November, but don't say no. And what do you have left? So he'll show you in the parentheses, this is what you're going to be deleting. And the student says Vember. You record over here. Now for this one, I did an example of the student got it wrong. So you give the corrective feedback, and then the student would do the next 2 and you would record. And then you would record the total. Add all of these up to get your total. So you can see, did that child pass at the syllable level or did they not pass? And these would be passing scores here. Okay, so now we're moving on to the onset rhyme level, and just want to remind you up here a little note. If the first 3 items on levels F and G are automatic, you can skip the final 2 and score them as automatic. So here we have level F. Say feet. Now say feet, but don't say f. And then the student tells you eat. So even though it was correct and it was automatic, on these levels, we still need to do the first 3. Now, if they get the first 3 correct and automatic, then you can skip the last 2. However, if any of those first 3 were either incorrect or were correct but not automatic, then you do need to give all of them. And then again, you score over here, you record the score of how the student did. Then we go to level G, say guide. Now say guide, but instead of g, say r. And if the student is correct and automatic, you move on to the next one. If they had gotten all 3 correct and automatic, we could have skipped the last 2, but I wanted to show you what would happen if that student maybe didn't get all 3. So I had that student was correct but not automatic, in which case we would then want to go ahead and do all of those here. And then we would record it and then we would tally. So the student would pass this level, so we would go ahead and we would move on to the next level. Now we're moving on to the basic phoneme level. And at this level, we're going to be giving all items H through M. So we start with level H, which is a deletion activity. Say sleep, now say sleep, but don't say s, and we get leap. So this would be correct, but not automatic. This is automatic. Now we have substitution, H2. Say grew, now say grew, but instead of g, say t, and we get true. Correct, correct, but not automatic. Automatic in the last one, so we would tally our scores, and then we can see at this level, the H, the student is correct, but not automatic. So at this level, we would want to work on some automaticity to try to help that student increase the speed. Then we have a level I, say went, now say went, but don't say t. So we're deleting that final sound, and went becomes when. So again, I've showed we've got one that's correct, one automatic. Here we have another correct but not automatic, and then we tally them up and we see again, this is an area where the student could do the skill, but it wasn't automatic, so we need to work on that automaticity, and then we would just tally up the total here. Now this is the advanced phoneme level, levels J, K, L, and M. And at the advanced phoneme level, typically developing students may develop at this level. This is late first to late second grade for levels J, K, and L. And then level M could be late second all the way to late third. So for level J, we have a substitution activity where we're substituting the middle sound. So I want to point out that 1 would be the short vowels and 2 would be the long vowel sound. So this is an example. Say sit, now say sit, but instead of say ah. So sit would be sat, and the student did not get it correct, so we would provide the feedback. If you say sit and change it to ah, you get sat, sit, sat. And then we have some other examples, and you can see the student did not get those right. By the end, the student was able to do 1, but not automatically. So we had 1 was correct and 0 were automatic. And then we move on to level K, which is deletion. Say glide, now say glide, but don't say ul. And again, we get a 0, so we would give that corrective feedback. If you say glide without ul, you get guide, glide, guide. And then we only have 2 at this initial level with K1 where we're deleting. And then we hop to K2 substitution, and then we have 3 substitution. Say flute, now say flute, but instead of ul, say The student did not get it correct. So if you say flute and change ul to you get fruit, flute, fruit. And then you could see the student did not get any of those correct, and that would be 0 out of 0, at which point we would discontinue. So I have, again, the discontinue rule is here. Discontinue testing if the combined correct score on 2 consecutive levels is 0, 1, or 2 out of 10. So if we combine J and K, we get a total of 10. So we have 5 and 5. And so this student only had 1 correct and 0 automatic, so we would then discontinue at this point. Now, if the student had gotten them correct or had gotten enough of them correct, we would have moved on to level L, which is substitution. So here we're substituting the final sound, mouth, change to s, and we get mouse, mouth to mouse. So that would be an example. And then when we move on to level M, we are deleting at M1, where we're deleting the second to last sound. So in that blend, say send, now say send, but don't say n, and we get said, so send to said. And then M2, we're doing substitution, say drift, now say drift, but instead of f, say p, and so drift becomes dripped. So that's what we would expect students, if they were able to make it through all of those levels. The advanced phoneme level goes all the way through J through M. Okay, scoring the past. So as we said in the earlier slide, a level is considered passed if at least 4 out of 5 items are correct. A level is considered automatic if at least 4 out of 5 items are answered automatically. So if a student gets 3 out of 5 or fewer, then it's not considered passed. And so you're going to have a correct score and an automatic score, just like we looked at on the previous slide. And we also had already gone over how to score 0 for incorrect, 1 for correct but not automatic, and then an X of correct and automatic. And then on that beginning page, you're going to record all of the results to see what was the highest level that was correct, and then what was the highest level that was automatic. And then were there any below that level that were not automatic? And that does happen sometimes. And that will help you figure out where you need to really target your instruction. Considerations for assessment. So who should we use the past assessment with? Well, all students in grades pre-K to 3rd grade need to be assessed in their phonological awareness. Now, our pre-K students and maybe some of our kindergarten students who do need to be assessed in some of those beginning skills like word awareness, rhyme awareness, identifying initial, medial, or final sounds, we could use an assessment like the Heggerty assessment for those earlier skills. But certainly using the past with kids up through the beginning or even middle or end of 3rd grade, if the students are having trouble, would certainly be wise, because some students are still developing phonemic awareness in 3rd grade. So that's just a way to make sure they're on track. And then of course, any of our at-risk students who are struggling should be assessed, and the past is a great tool to help us identify what skills they're missing. How often should we administer the past? In a general education classroom, 2 to 3 times yearly would work for most teachers. In the beginning of the year, you're really using it as a formative assessment to target the instruction, and you need to discover right away what are the skills the students are missing so you can begin that instruction right away. You're also informally observing kids all the time. And so we use that daily observation to refine our teaching practices all of the time. So that's just something else to keep in mind. When I'm doing intervention with students, I always use the past as a formative assessment tool, but then every time I'm working with that child, I'm constantly observing, I'm seeing how they're doing, I'm taking notes, and I'm refining my instruction. So I generally don't give the past again after that initial formal assessment until I feel the student is ready to exit, and then I will give them the past again just to make sure that my observations were accurate, and I want to make sure that that student really is ready to no longer receive that intervention. Okay, Ella, we're going to play some word games, and they're going to start off easy, and then they'll get a little bit harder as we go along. Okay, you all set? Ready to begin? Mm-hmm. Okay. Say sidewalk.
Sidewalk.
Now say sidewalk, but don't say side.
Walk.
Say dolphin.
Dolphin.
Now say dolphin, but don't say doll.
Fin.
Say tornado.
Tornado.
Now say tornado, but don't say tor.
Nado.
Say instrument.
Instrument.
Now say instrument, but don't say in.
Instrument.
Say joke.
Joke.
Now say joke, but don't say j.
Oak.
Say rise.
Rise.
Now say rise, but don't say
Eyes.
Say read.
Read.
Now say read, but instead of say n.
Need.
Say her.
Her.
Now say her, but instead of say
Fur.
I'm going to move on to the second set. Say tried.
Tried.
Now say tried, but don't say t.
Ride.
Say slam.
Slam.
Now say slam, but don't say s.
Lamb.
Say froze.
Froze.
Now say froze, but instead of say g.
Grows.
Say trees.
Trees.
Now say trees, but instead of t, say
Freeze.
say fries.
Fries.
Now say fries, but instead of say p.
Prize.
Say port.
Port.
Now say port without the t.
Pour.
Say cold.
Cold.
Now say cold without d.
Cold.
Say same.
Same.
Now say same without
Sam.
If you say same without you get say. Same, say. See how that works? Say place.
Place.
Now say place without s.
Pla.
If you say place without s, you get play. Place, play. Say need.
Need.
So now say need without d.
Need.
Say hit.
Hit.
Now say hit, but instead of it, say at.
Hat.
Say when.
When.
Now say when, but instead of f, say if.
When.
When we say when and we change f to if, we get win. When. Say tool.
Tool.
Now say tool, but instead of oo, say f.
Tail.
When we say tool and we change oo to f, we get tell. Tool, tell. Say gate.
Gate.
Now say gate, but change a to o.
goat,
Say cape.
cape,
Now say cape, but change A to E.
gape,
If we say cape and change A to E, we get keep. Cape, keep. Okay. Say try.
try,
Now say try, but don't say
tie,
Say slope.
slope,
Now say slope, but don't say
slope, soap,
Soap. Say snail.
snail,
Now say snail, but instead of n, say t.
sail,
So if we say snail and change n to t, we get stale. Snail, stale. Say flows.
flows,
Now say flows, but change ol to
froze,
Froze. Say glean.
glean,
Now say glean, but change ol to
green,
Say foam.
foam,
Now say foam, but instead of say n.
phone,
Say jet.
jet,
Now say jet, but instead of t, say
gem,
Say both.
boat,
Now say both, but instead of say t.
buff,
If we say both, and instead of we say t, we get boat. Both, boat. Say wrote.
fruit,
Now say wrote, but change t to p.
rope,
Say teeth.
teeth,
Now say teeth, but instead of say ch.
teach, teach,
Say wisp.
wisp,
Now say wisp, but don't say s.
whip,
Say dent.
dent,
Now say dent, but don't say n.
dent,
Say ripped.
ripped,
Now say ripped, but instead of p, say s.
wrist,
Say soft.
soft,
Now say soft, but instead of f, say ul.
salt,
So if we say soft and we change f to ul, we get salt. Soft, salt. Say taste.
taste,
Now say taste, but instead of s, say n.
taint,
If we say taste and we change s to n, we get taint. Taste, taint. Okay, well, we're all done. Great job. The previous segment on administering and scoring the past was an excerpt from Read Intervention's online video tutorials on structured literacy. Our goal is to make professional development both convenient and affordable. The following online resources can be found at learn.readintervention.com. These include Module 1, Phonological Awareness, which includes over 2 hours on phonological awareness assessment, instruction, and implementation. Module 2, Phonics, which includes over 6 hours of phonics videos covering all phonics concepts, as well as common prefixes, suffixes, and spelling rules. And finally, our structured literacy materials, which include over 400 PowerPoint slides, as well as access to printed materials for assessment and implementation that are available for download. Okay.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Yep. All right. So what we'd like to do is go over the questions now, and then have any, and then have maybe a discussion or questions. You could put your questions in the chat box. So let's see. First one, what is your opinion of noting the student response when the response is a 0?
So I actually have, sometimes I will note the response and other times not, just because you want to kind of keep it going quickly. I think David Kilpatrick talks about this when he goes over, just sort of like the testing situation, and you really want to keep it going quickly, especially since a lot of kids do lose their focus. So if you're noting every mistake, that can become a little bit time consuming. Oh, we got another admit there. So I think it's really up to you how you want to do it, but you definitely want to keep the pace moving. That's my advice.
Okay, good. All right. What if the student asks you to repeat and claims they couldn't hear you? Yeah.
So you do need to repeat it. You do want to repeat it, but you can't score it as automatic. So even if they maybe did hear you, but they're stalling, use it as like a stalling tactic, it can't be marked automatic. So they can't kind of fake their way through passing a level, because unless you've passed it at the automatic level, it's something you're still going to go back and revisit.
Okay. So for clarity, if it wear a headset with a microphone, that's what someone said.
Yeah, okay. I keep a mic. Here's my mic. $60 on Amazon. I did purchase a microphone when I started doing the exclusive online tutoring. I found it was really helpful because otherwise it's hard for the kids to hear you.
I agree. Or
earbuds work too. You can also do earbuds.
Can you get a headphone?
You could. I think it depends on individual preference of what people are comfortable with. This has worked really well, just having a little mic that's sitting there, and it really does help a lot with the kids. I think Donna's frozen, so I'm gonna keep going. I think she might have some Wi-Fi issues right now. So let's see, where were we? She was reading me the question, so I have to just go back and see where we are. Okay. We already did this one. Yeah, we got that one. Let's see, seems this is from D. Oh yeah, so someone asked about, seems this is form D, but some different words. So there have been a variety of past assessments and he's updated them. I think this is one from 2016. And even within the Equipped for Reading Success book, there are several different assessments with different words. So there isn't just one past. He's got several different versions, and he has one that's a shortened version that is supposed to be used as sort of a quick screener, and that's another one that can be used. Let's see. How did you score the word froze in the video? She said it in an odd way, and then the word was repeated by you, but not corrected. Yeah, so for some of them, what she did is she said them and she sounded them out, but she did it slowly. So that was not automatic. Those were scored as correct, but not automatic. So sometimes kids will kind of slowly say it, and then they do say it, they do say the correct sounds. So if they do say the correct word, even if it's very slowly, I will give them credit. As long as it's within the 5 seconds, I'll give them credit for it, but it's not automatic. I hope that answers that question. And then, let's see. Time. Yeah, someone was saying it'd be helpful to score in real time. Donna was just saying that might be another one to do down the road, of just seeing how it works in real time. That just becomes a little complicated unless we kind of did it with an adult to have a student do that because of the confidentiality issues. That was actually my daughter. So if it was a real student, I wouldn't have done it and shown her face, but she's mine, so I can do that. Welcome back, Donna. Okay. I kept going.
I'm so glad the whole thing didn't go. What I was thinking for next month is having everyone score your daughter, and everyone, inter-rater reliability is what it's called. Are we all hearing and seeing the same thing?
Yeah.
I think that might be kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think too, I mean, as much as this is a very systematic and systematic assessment, and we really all want to be doing it the same way, it's not an exact science, you know, in a way. So there are other variables. Like for instance, one of the things I wanted to mention, he says to give feedback on every single incorrect response. And I think you need to gauge the student a little bit, because for some kids, let's say a student, it just happened to me today actually when I was assessing a student. They get the first two wrong, right, on a section. Let's say you're scoring section H, right? They get the first two wrong. So you already know this is something I need to address with this student. They already didn't pass, right? And then they get the third one wrong. And now you're giving them feedback again. So now they know, oh boy, I got that one wrong too. And then they get the fourth one wrong. And then, you know, there's feedback again. And I could sense this child starting to become very anxious because she knew she was getting everything wrong, because every time I gave her feedback, it was just confirmation that what you said was wrong. Right. So I chose to not give her feedback on every single wrong item because I could see it was causing her anxiety. So once I know for certain the child did not pass the level, I sometimes will not continue. Like if they get all 5 wrong, I may not give them feedback on all 5 if I sense that that child is becoming anxious. So you do have to make decisions based on the moment sometimes. So it's just something to consider that I've experienced, because a lot of these kids are very nervous and they're used to having a hard time and they can become upset. So just keep that in mind about the feedback. That's just my kind of 2 cents about that.
Okay, there's another question here. With virtual administration, our teachers have noticed words with P and B are the ones that are hard to discern. It was suggested that we might switch those words out for virtual assessments. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're following that particular skill, if you have the Equip for Reading Success book, you can go into that level. If I'm doing H1, I can pick any word from H1. You could pick the words you want to pick. And in fact, he does say in his book, you don't have to do the past. You can actually just pick a level and choose 5 words from that level to see how a student is doing, engage how they're doing. You don't necessarily have to use the past to do that. So absolutely, if the teachers don't have microphones and it's hard for them to articulate and it's hard for the kids to hear, by all means, switch it out. As long as you're sticking to those words that are in there and you're following the pattern, go for it. Great idea.
Jennifer, can I ask a question in that regard?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to consider that, right? Because if there's 5 or 6 items per level, yeah, you're not doing a complete phoneme analysis. So the idea that you wouldn't be doing, my instinct was like, but then you wouldn't get any but or duh information, right? But you're not, of course, doing a comprehensive phoneme analysis in this. You're doing a sampling of the concept of deleting or the concept of manipulation or whatever. So yeah, so it actually, I wouldn't think that we would want to use all the same phonemes or the like, but we're going to find, you know, just audiologically that the high frequency F, V, S, Z, if you look up, there are higher, I was a former audiologist, there's higher frequency sounds. And so particularly if you are a person of advanced age, I myself just found a high frequency hearing loss, you know, that these sounds could just become increasingly difficult for you to hear. And so we don't want to penalize the child for their production. So I think that that's something to be sensitive to ourselves as well, is what can we hear well? And if we have any hearing loss or any difficulty hearing those sounds, we need to set the kid up for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if the student hears the word and then gives you a word back that's not a real word, that would be interesting. I've never actually had that happen, what was described there about switching, you know, the sounds that you do get that with the F and the V. You always have to have the kids feel what their mouth is doing, you know, when you're saying like a V versus the F, like you're biting your lip. So, but I've never actually experienced that with having them you know, mix up those sounds that are similar to each other. Because usually when they make their mistake, it's more that it's kind of completely wrong, out of whack, you know. But
and to clarify, what I meant was that F, V, S as in Sam, Z as in Zeta,
Yeah.
there are certain sounds that are difficult to hear.
Oh, yeah.
So we as adults, and particularly those of us if we are aging adults, who may experience some hearing loss that we may or may not be aware of, just looking for those patterns and those THs and other high frequency sounds. So just being mindful that there are sounds that, you know, B and P are actually easy to hear, easier to hear, lower frequency sounds. So, so particularly when we're using technology to consider what the errors are.
Yeah, it definitely presents an issue with the phonemic awareness. I've had teachers that I still know that teach in the classroom, and they're using Heggerty, and they're trying to do it online. I'm like, this is really rough. We need to get a microphone because the kids can't understand what I'm saying. So yeah, it's a challenge.
There's a question about a typical lesson after assessing with the past. Do you want to address that, or should we put that?
I mean, it could be. Well, we kind of talked about maybe doing that in October or something like that. Yeah, but just like kind of a quick answer about that. He recommends doing 2 levels at once. That you're working on one level for automaticity, and then you're working on one level to really understand then how to actually perform that function. And so then that would be something you're maybe using cubes, or you're using some sort of manipulatives to teach. So I always have 2 levels going. I have that level that they can do it, but I'm working on the automaticity. And then I have the level where we're working at that skill, we're working at learning that skill. That's in general, that's what I follow. And that seems to work well with the students I have. And I've just seen tremendous growth with them. I found that, and I've always done phonemic awareness and phonological awareness with students as an OG teacher, but when I found Equip for Reading Success, I felt like it was life altering because it was just so systematic and so targeted. That's what I love about it. And let's face it, planning an OG lesson or any kind of structured literacy lesson, it's very time consuming. So it's really nice to have one piece that's there for you that you're not having to pull, okay, what words, I used to do that. Well, what words am I going to use? And it's time consuming.
Right.
So I just love this book. I love this program.
Yeah, it's all there for you.
Yep.
So to reiterate, when you're doing 2 levels at once, one is for automaticity without manipulatives, and the other is with manipulatives because you're teaching.
Yeah. That's how I do it. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Okay. Did there used to be an E1 level? Wondering why it is the only level that has no 1, but E2 and E3. Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a David Kilpatrick question. That is a really good question. I've often wondered where he got those levels from.
It's kind of
I never asked. I did have a chance to talk to him once for about an hour and a half on the phone about consulting about a student, but I never asked him that. I should have asked. Next time I'll ask if I talk to him again.
And where would one find a shorter version?
You know, I can't remember where I have that. And I'm going to look. I can't remember so the first time I was exposed to this, it was actually, I have to do 30 hours every year of continued professional development to keep my certification. And I did go to a workshop several years ago, and there was a presenter, and she was presenting about the past. And that was the first time I was exposed to it. And I might have gotten it from her. So if I did, I will find it and see if I can post it on the Science of Reading site. Or it might be, and I'm looking right now to see, it might be, oh, here it is, the screening test. Is that it? Form A. No, maybe that's not it. I thought it might have been in the actual Equip for Reading Success book. But I'm going to search for that because I'm pretty sure I have it digitally, and I'm thinking it was from that, but I don't recall.
Do you think
I'll
get
look.
it from Kilpatrick?
It wasn't from him. You mean, did I get, no, it definitely wasn't from him. I think it was from a workshop I went to, but I'll look for it, see if I can find it. I always use the regular one.
I do have it. I'll
have it.
Yeah, we did. I facilitated his Essentials book study this summer, and on page 400 in that, he gives you a code to get into his site, and he has all forms of the past.
Oh,
and
cool.
some chapters. So I will put it in, I'll put it in our EFRS Facebook group, the book study one.
Great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, because he does have different versions. Like the version that I showed you guys, I think that might have been my digital version. And there are some things on that version that are not in other versions. So, for instance, like saying the typical grade level is not on all of the versions of the past. So, and I don't know what the reason for that is, but yeah, they are slightly different. But they do all assess the same levels, so that's consistent.
Okay, Eileen says on page 135 that E1 is optional, C is explanation. Okay, here's another question. Middle school students often have scattered scores across levels. How would I determine an approximate grade level for phonemic awareness skills? Also, what is recommended for designing instruction to address the spotty skills?
So I don't think if you have a student in middle school and it's all over the place, I don't know that you could necessarily come up with a specific grade level equivalent. That's just my kind of gut thinking about that. I mean, I've never personally had to really come up with a grade level equivalent because for me, it's all about just, this is the skill and now I'm going to teach to it. But I can see how in a like a public school, they like to have an easy number to work with for data purposes, like what's the grade level? I don't think it's that simple though with this. I don't know if you could necessarily do that. Like let's say they missed something at the syllable level, but they could do the onset rhyme level. Some of the basic is they can't do, some they can, some of the advanced they can do. That does happen. I have an 8th grader that I work with and he is very spotty. He's spotty day to day, honestly. So that's just my take on it. I don't know if you really can give a specific, grade level equivalency. But then you're asking what is the recommended, how would you just design the instruction? Start with the most basic. Now, certain things you could do at the same time, like E3, a lot of times kids have trouble with E3. You might be working on E3, but then working on some higher level skills too. I usually tend to start with the first skill they missed. So I start at the syllable level. Did they miss anything? Is there anything I have to work on at the syllable level? If not, then I go to the onset rhyme level. Is there anything I need to work on at that level? And that's how I plan and make it sequential. And I start with the skills kind of as in the order of difficulty. So that's how I would design my instruction. You can't cover it all at once. So you've got to start with the most basic and work your way up.
Okay. All right, can you see the questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one we were just on though. So
we're on the last.
Let's see.
Okay, one is
learners. Yes, I have used this with middle schoolers, like 13-year-old. Most of my students are younger students, so I have a lot of first, second, but I have quite a few 4th, 5th, even 6th graders though. So yeah, you can use this with anyone because a lot of adults who struggle, they don't have solid phonemic awareness. So you could use this with anyone, even an adult for sure. Let's see what else.
To get more practice.
I've never done that. I've never done any kind of broader screening. I really would wish all schools would screen and use this tool. It's free, or something similar. Hegarty, using the dibbles, like something. We need screeners. We need to identify these kids. I was just telling Donna, I met with a friend's daughter tonight. She's going into 3rd grade. And she could not complete anything past level F going into 3rd grade, and nobody picked up on this. So this poor child she's crying on her Zoom sessions every day and thinks that she's dumb because she just hasn't learned this. Mm-hmm. So we need to, definitely using it as a screener would be a great way to go.
One of the things, Jennifer, that I was just kind of brainstorming, thinking about, and I'm not trying to drum up business. It's truly from my experience to get, when I saw your setup with the cutoff criterions and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I need to modify basically make an administration kit so that I have that there so that that's you know, I can administer the Woodcock Johnson or other things like falling off a log, but this,
Yeah.
I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So as kind of a public service or whatever, and I literally am imagining a coffee shop in town that has a great little public coffee shop that has a great little covered area. And I'm like, just come down to the hangar from 2 to 4. But then there's always the onus of then what? If you identify something, it's like doing a community hearing screening.
Yeah.
If you identify something, then you then have some kind of format, like this is what this indicates. It's a potential risk factor for difficulty learning to read. And, you know, it's something you should talk about with your teacher. Now, the hard thing, of course, is that the teacher doesn't necessarily know what to do with that, but that's not my problem.
Yeah.
And it also, at least if we can elevate the issue that isn't being elevated.
So I can suggest something. Years ago, when my kids were in preschool, I remember there was a speech pathologist that offered to come in. I want to say they were it was like the year before kindergarten, offered to come in and do speech screenings. And maybe that might be something, if you're thinking of trying to kind of reach out to the community, maybe look at your local preschools and see how you can reach out to them and maybe offer to come in and do some free, you know, phonemic awareness screening, because we want to identify these kids as early as possible. And we know in preschool, there's certain things expected that most preschoolers can do. And if they can't do those things, there's some red flags there. So that's something you could think about offering too.
You know, I think I would really caution people to do any sort of screening for free, because you're opening up a can of worms for the school districts. Those teachers don't really know what to do with that information once they get it. You know, we wouldn't be in this mess if they did.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't do that for public schools for sure. This was a private preschool and something, you know, that they wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, you would maybe even like offering to just do some free training for the teachers. You know, what are some red flags you might want to look for in your students? You know, can they rhyme? Can they, you know, did they get their words mixed up? Just to bring awareness to the whole situation, because we're catching kids too late, and that's a big problem. We need to catch them early.
All right, one more, and then I have a question for everyone here. Do you feel Heggerty assessments should be used with certain grades or students? Not sure Heggerty digs deep enough, or different information. Seems like a lot to give both. Suggestions, advice.
Yeah, that I agree with that. I would say for second grade and up, the past, I prefer the past. I think for kindergarten, first grade, beginning first grade, sure. The Heggerty, I think, does the trick for that, but not for the older kids. Not even second grade. I would definitely choose the past to do. Now, the past does not do some of those really basic skills though. So preschool, kindergarten, early first, you might want to do the Heggerty, because you know, this one is really assess the word awareness. There are still kids that have issues with some of those lower level skills that the past doesn't really assess. Like the initial, can you identify the initial sound? Can you identify the medial sound? So yeah, I would tend to agree with you. When I'm assessing a kindergartner or first grader, I do use Heggerty, but I also will use the past. If it's a first grader, I actually like to do both, but I don't give all of the Heggerty. I give the pieces that the past doesn't cover, if that makes sense. So I don't do, if it's the same skill, I wouldn't do it on both, because there is some overlap between the Heggerty and the past. So I do the entire past. So let's take first grade, for example. I do the entire past, and then I do pieces of the Heggerty to kind of fill in the blanks to make sure that those lower level skills are solid. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So for those of you still here, would you put in the chat box some things that you would like to see us do in the next couple months? Some activities or something that you feel that you're not real strong on with Kilpatrick's work, because I'm trying to do some long range planning of what that would look like for the rest of the year. My intentions are to meet every first Thursday of the month. So This is the first Thursday of September. We were going to meet October 3rd, I think is the next one. Just kind of do, something like that. So, just some ideas of what we could look, and I see some ideas coming in. That's awesome.
I also, just a quick note, I do modeling the 1-minute activities with manipulatives. I have, on my training modules, I have all of the levels I model with manipulatives, but I have some free ones that are up on my YouTube channel. Some video clips of manipulation with certain, I can't remember which level I have. I think it might be level H, I don't remember. But they're on my YouTube channel. If you go to my website, I have a link at the top that says sample videos. If you click on that, it'll take you to my YouTube site, my YouTube channel, and there's some videos on there, if that's helpful. I wanna also say, somebody said something about how do I get my school on board? I love those podcasts, the Emily Hanford podcasts. You have to just spread awareness, see if you can get people who are in positions of power to listen. It's difficult. That's one of the reasons I'm here, because I was in a public school, and sometimes your opinions are not welcome. And if you're in a school district that does not support this methodology, it's very difficult. And so I just decided I needed to do my own thing and needed to bring awareness. So keep it up, keep having the conversations, keep sending the podcasts, keep going, knocking on your principal's door and sharing information. We have to just keep talking about it. Hopefully at some point they'll listen. Was there anything else we missed, Donna?
I don't think so.
Do I have time for one question?
Sure.
So,
hi.
hi, how are you? While I'm listening to you, I've been reading the book, I think my second or third time this past week. I actually hurt myself, so I can't get off the couch.
Oh no.
Yeah, I have a bad knee, so I have no, but I'm excited because I have so much to read and catch up on. But the book is really kind of starting to click. I'm texting a friend whose girl is going into second grade and is struggling. And I texted her today and I said, I think after the third time of reading the book, I think you have to do this. And she just texted me and said, is it something we can write down? Is it tactile? Can they move it around? Or is it just, audio? I said, it's just audio. And she said, well, I don't know if that's really going to work for her because, her mind goes a mile a minute and I don't know how that's going to work, but I'll try it. So what else can I tell her?
Yeah. So I think it's really, really important that when you're teaching a new skill, you need to use manipulatives with the kids because it's a very abstract concept, right? Like deleting a sound or substituting a sound. It's so abstract. The cubes, and I use a lot of cubes, so you can use chips, but whatever you want to use. It brings it down. It makes it concrete so they can see it. And one of the things that David Kilpatrick mentions too, that especially with older students, ones that are already at least reading a little bit, maybe second grade and above, you can actually, when you introduce a skill, you can actually show it to them with letters.
Yep.
And then you can erase the letter and say, look, what happens when I remove this letter? What happens? Oh, look at that. And then say, we're going to practice some activities that will help you do this without looking at the letters, but we're just doing it based on the sounds. And then you use the manipulatives. Most of the students I work with have some sort of an attention deficit or some kind of impulsivity issue. So it's, this is typical. It's very hard for a lot of kids to sit still through this.
So you can even start the first way, you can start with the letters and then you can go to a manipulative. The chipping.
Yeah, you would just do one time to show them one word, just like this is what we're actually going to be doing.
Okay.
But then the letters go away.
Okay.
It's just like a one time, one word, just demonstrate it, but then you put that away. Now we're going to use these cubes to represent the sounds in the word. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of kids, I find that many of my students, they're able to do, now I'm talking like my first, second graders, they're able to do the syllable level. They're usually pretty good with the onset rhyme level, unless they're a severe problem. It's when they get to that basic phoneme level, they cannot segment those blends. And it's really, really important as teachers too, that we do not teach blends as one sound. They're not one sound. They're two sounds. It's very confusing for a student when you're trying to when you're teaching a blend as one sound, but then you're asking them to do phoneme segmentation and manipulation. They're not one sound. They're two. So just starting by let's say you're working at the basic phoneme level and they're not ready to do a deletion yet. Just have them start to pull down one chip for each sound, right? Flat. Ooh, ah. Some kids finger spell. I have one little boy, he's very resistant to using cubes, but he'll put it on his fingers.
Right.
That works too. You have to just work with them. And one of the things when we're in my office, we can't do it virtually, but once they're able to do a skill, I toss a ball with them when we're working on the automaticity, and it's their favorite part of the lesson. So I'll say a word, say cat, I throw the ball, they grab it, cat. Then, say cat without k, and they toss it back to me and they say the sound. So we toss the ball back and forth just to kind of get them, because I want their mind to be off of what we're doing. We want them to be automatic. So once they know how to do the skill, you can do things like tossing a ball, you make it fun.
Skipping. Yeah, and that's on page 45 in the Equip book. He talks about how you need to use words too.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can use, now keep in mind, when you introduce letters, it's no longer phonemic awareness, it becomes phonics. But that's okay if, let's say I've taught a skill for phonemic awareness, and they're doing pretty well with that, and I want to then maybe bring in the phonics piece. I could give them magnetic letters, and I could say to them, show me sit. Okay, let's change sit to pit. Okay, now we have pit. Change pit to pin. You can have them do that kind of manipulation. I know Louisa Moats talks about that in her book, Speech to Print. It's one of my OG books. It was like one of our Bibles that we reread. So you can do that. You just need to be aware that that's a phonics activity. It's not actually a phonemic awareness activity because you put the letters in there. Still a good activity though.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. We are out of time. So I got some great ideas for next month and maybe for down the road. Thanks for showing up, everyone. And a big thanks to Jennifer for her skills. We appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And guys, please reach out if anybody needs anything. I'm here to help.
Check out her website too. She's got some really good things on there, so you might get something out of that. Appreciate that. Okay, folks.
Thanks, guys.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Donna, do you want to try to touch base at some point or another night we could kind of make a plan based on what you think people might want, if you want some help with next month, whatever you need.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to stop recording here.
Oh, at the very bottom, there's a little box on next to screen share and it says stop recording.